Welcome back to Cheddar, everyone. With less than 100 days until the 2020 presidential election, a new poll out from Immigration Hub shows that pro-immigration messaging could have a lot of power over some swing state voters. Joining us now, Tyler Moran, who is the executive editor of Immigration Hub. Tyler, thank you so much for taking the time here with us today. Break down this poll for us. What was the main takeaway?
I don't have sound on my end, so just checking with folks on your end.
We've
I
got
apologize.
you. We've got you loud and clear. No worries at all, Tyler. So just once again, to make sure that you can hear us and heard the question, we do know that there is some key messaging, especially around immigration, that could be key to some swing state voters. Break down this poll for us, and what was the main takeaway? Okay, it seems like we're sorting out some issues with Tyler. We're going to go to a quick market check and just take a look at where some of the major averages stand as of right now, where we are just outside of 90 minutes left in today's trading session. Simple math would say we're about 97 minutes away from it, which is almost the same amount of days that we have until the election, just a little bit more than that. But anyway, Dow Jones Industrial Average is up by about 65 points right now. S&P 500 index is also up here on the day, holding on to fractional gains. And we've got the Russell 2000 also in positive territory there on your screen. Taking a quick gander at my screen, the NASDAQ composite, that has touched positive territory and held on to triple-digit gains on the day. That's up by about 1.4%, 145 points to the upside. We are tracking some positive news around Moderna and the positive vaccine movement there, rather, from Moderna is certainly lifting some of the markets. But then you also have some of the tech names, Apple and Amazon. They are continuing to move higher. I don't know if we can, but if we may pull up a look at Take-Two Interactive. That is a company that's seen a new all-time high here on the day. That is one of the companies we track as part of our Cheddar 50 index. Take-Two certainly has a few things working to its benefit right now. Most recently, over the past week, you had positive video game previews from Wells Fargo, Goldman last week for Take-Two. And so that is once again hitting a new all-time high, and that's up by about 2% here on the day as we've been tracking it. Okay. And so quickly, if we may, coming up, let's go back to our guest, as it sounds like we have Tyler back. Tyler, if you can hear us, just shout.
Yes, I'm
Wonderful.
here.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got less than 100 days until the 2020 presidential election. You've got a new study that's actually showed some pro-immigration messaging could have a lot of power over swing state voters. And so particularly break down this poll for us. What was the main takeaway?
Yeah, so I think conventional wisdom coming out of the 2016 election was that Donald Trump wins when he talks about immigration and that Democrats should avoid the topic. And so we set to ask the question, do moderate voters exist that we can move away from Trump and toward Democrats? And so what we did was a study that was a poll, but it was also a predictive voter model. And we found almost 6 million voters in Colorado, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin who move away from Trump in their vote choice towards Democrats with immigration content. What I find most interesting about this is that the voters in the model skew male, white, suburban, and non-college educated.
Okay, and so you polled more than 9,000 voters across those states. Are these states going to be as important in this election as they were in 2016?
100%. I think all eyes right now are obviously on Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Michigan, just a 10,000 vote margin, Pennsylvania, 40,000. And as you know, in Colorado, there's a critical Senate race between Cory Gardner and Hickenlooper. So these are going to be key to Democrats in 2020, both the presidency and potentially taking back the Senate.
How big of an issue will voter turnout be, especially as we wrap our minds around what turnout looks like in 2020 amid the coronavirus pandemic that we still find ourselves in the midst of, and as voters perhaps pivot their attention towards mail-in voting instead?
Yeah, I mean, turnout is going to be huge. And as you note, there have to be really two options for voters. One has to be vote by mail. that people are allowed to vote by mail, that their postage is paid, that they have ways that they can drop off their ballot. But for those who want to vote in person, it has to be safe and easy for them to do so. So more polling locations, more polling times, etc. And obviously turnout for the immigrant population, Latinx, AAPI voters of color are going to be critical in sending a message that hopefully Donald Trump does not align with the values of Americans.
For a lot of people, they look at the options, and one of the kind of consensus opinions that we've continued to hear is that they don't like any of the candidates that are in front of us for 2020. And so in that instance, if they choose instead not to cast a ballot, is that as beneficial for Biden as casting a ballot?
I would argue that Joe Biden is going to bring our country in a much better direction than Donald Trump. The folks in 16 who either sat out or thought that it was okay to give someone new a try, hopefully have seen the destruction that he's brought to this country and that we really need to move for a new change.
And so a big takeaway from this poll as well is that even with the pandemic raging, information is, and rather immigration, I should say, is a huge issue in this election. You could argue that both of them are a huge issue in this election. One side's argument more persuasive than the other when it comes to immigration, though?
I mean, I think the takeaway here is that, conventional wisdom is that Donald Trump wins when he talks about immigration. He certainly ran a xenophobic and racist campaign in 2016. And we know that he's already doing it this year. He is bombarding voters online on Facebook and elsewhere with these ads. This model shows that the exact voters that Trump needs to win, moderate voters in the Rust Belt, move away from him with his xenophobic messaging and move towards Democrats with values-based immigration messaging. So the bottom line is that this is not an issue that can't be talked about. And in fact, Democrats have to talk about it or they're leaving votes on the table.
And your survey, it found weaknesses on immigration messaging for Trump's campaign among some of the voters, including white, non-college educated men who helped Trump win in 2016. And you started to break this down. How could Biden use that to his advantage?
Well, I think that the vice president just needs to continue to lay out a values-based message on immigration. The public does not support family separation. The public supports a path to earn citizenship. The public supports protecting dreamers. And it's just making sure that the public knows where he stands in contrast to Donald Trump's divisive policies.
Tyler Moran, I'm glad we got the audio working. A pleasure to have you on the show here today, Executive Director at Immigration Hub. Thanks so much for joining us.